we will carry on with the topic of social media. And today we will speak about social media and asset management. But before I start my presentation, a small video just to show what happens on the social media today in 1 minute. Well, now what has all this got to do with asset management? That's the question we will try to answer this morning. So how did we proceed? Basically, CACEIS and PwC launched a comprehensive survey on the use of social media by asset manager. First, we had to define our sample. And so we chose the 100 largest asset managers by asset under management, plus the top 20 fastest sales growth in 2012. And as you have groups that belong to both categories, at the end we have a sample of 104 asset management firms. Then we had to choose the 4 social media on which we will make our studies. So we decided to choose YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And for each of them, we had to choose some KPIs on which we will gather the figures. And so you have them in front of you. For YouTube, in the number of videos, the number of subscribers, the number of views. For Facebook, the number of likes. For Twitter, the number of tweets, number of followers, and the average number of retweets. And for LinkedIn is the number of followers. Then, once we had all our data, we launched in-depth interviews with some leading firms. I would like to thank them very much. You have their name in front of you: Carmignac, Amundi, T. Rowe Price, Vanguard, Wells Fargo, Nordea, Schroeder. So, what is today our agenda? First, we will see the results of the survey. Then, we will try to have a look at the social media strategies that are being implemented currently. Then, as it has been said by Nilofer just before, we will also see that social media is leading towards disruptive new models in the asset management industry. We had already 2 which are in place, and probably many more to come, and then we will conclude. So let's first see the results of our survey. Basically, we can categorize all asset managers into 4 groups. The first one, quite important, 40%, those who do not still use any social media at all. Then you have those who are active, posting news, sending information, more on a push mode. That's 51% of our sample. Then those who are truly interactive, and engage with their clients and prospects, that's 9%. And final group, those who have integrated social media in the DNA of their company, which create really full connectivity, and this, nobody is there yet. So, what are the groups involved? If we link the involvement with the size of the company. Basically, we can see very easily that the bigger the firms are, the more used they are on social media. 46% of the sample only if their groups have assets under management of 150 billion or below, and 77% for the largest one. Now we tried also to define a ranking in the asset management industry, and thanks to a proprietary model using a weighted average on various KPIs, I will be able to show you a ranking. What can we say? This ranking is dominated by strong asset management brands, very well-known brands in the public. And the top 10 groups are non-affiliated. Let me just define what we call non-affiliated. They are all asset management firms that do not belong either to a large insurance group or to a large bank. For example, AXA Investment Manager would be affiliated, HSBC Asset Management would be affiliated, Amundi would be affiliated, JP Morgan Asset Management would be affiliated. And 9 of the top 10 groups are US-based. And so it's one very important point is that USA are much more in advance than compared to Europe. So here is this ranking. You have in bold, because they are not that numerous, the European players, and in light gray, the other actors, which are mostly US-based. Now, this is just a ranking, but if you look at the number of points each of them got, there is quite a difference, because, for example, number 1, which is BlackRock iShares, has roughly 600 points. If you go to number 20, like Pictet, it's 350 points, so a little bit half. And number 50, it's roughly 80 points. So you have a difference from 1 to 6 between number 1 and number 50. So what are the most popular social media sites? The most popular is YouTube. Why? For 2 reasons. It's because it's very useful for investor education, and this tool is mainly used for this. And second, it's not an interactive tool, it's mainly a push tool, so it's easier to use. That's why YouTube is used a lot. Then it's LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is used for recruitment purpose mainly. And then you have Twitter and Facebook. And they are less used because they are more interactive, and it's much more complex to use them for asset managers. Then on this graph, another interesting point is the difference between the European approach and the US one. For example, on YouTube, the US players use much more YouTube in order to market their presence, to market their products. And another important difference is Twitter. You have almost a 1 to 3 difference between the use of Twitter by European actors and by US actors. It's a huge difference. So what are the reasons now for using social media? The first one is to target a specific range of market participants, which mainly are end investors, intermediaries, and distributors. So it's not the whole community which is addressed, it's some part of the community. The second reason is to increase brand awareness. It's an excellent tool. Social media are an excellent tool to enhance the brand. And it's also a good tool to monitor clients, to monitor markets. And the third main reason is to provide information and support. That's more classical. Now we could raise a point, why did so many firms do not use social media yet? The first reason is that basically this issue has not been addressed at many firms. So it's not an objective decision, it's more a choice by default. And the second reason is the threat of compliance and regulatory issues on reputational damage, and a lot of firms are afraid of this. What are the main topics which are covered on social media? If we look at the number of messages which have been exchanged over a given time of period, the first one is product and market information, 44%. The second one is 34%, investor education and recruitment. So not so much for corporate information, which is relatively good. It means social media are started to be used really to interact. Let's look at interactivity. We have seen that only 9% of our sample was using social media to interact with their clients. So that's roughly 15% if we look in terms of accounts, 19 out of 136 accounts. We must notice that 89%, 9 out of 10 are non-affiliated. 8 out of 10 are US-based, and 57% of the largest firms are using social media to interact with their clients. Then, which kind of message are mostly used, which kind of vehicle is mostly used, is obviously Twitter and Facebook, which are the two most interactive social media that we have worked on in our study. So now let's have a look at the social media strategies which are implemented currently in various asset management firms. So first we have to understand that there is a community to address. Usually you see here distributors, investors, advisors. These three categories, everybody knows how to address them. However, it's not enough. You have to take care of the regulators. Regulators are everywhere now, as you know. They are also on the social media, and they watch. So you have to be careful. You have the press, you have the markets, competitors, of course. Then you have two important categories, the staff. Your own staff is using Twitter, Facebook with their own private account. How do you manage this on a corporate point of view? It's not that easy. And then you have the trolls. You have trolls everywhere. What do you do when you have to reply to trolls, when you have a trolling attack on you? And so you have to think about all this when you define a strategy. So, social media presence is not just opening an account. That would be too easy. And basically you have two choices. The first one, you can opt out. What does it mean to opt out? It has to be a positive decision. You have to know why you opt out. It must not be by default. And if you opt out, you have to try to see how much this strategy may cost you on the long term. And you have to understand the limited options that you choose by deciding not to go on the social media. Then, if you opt in, you need to have a comprehensive social media strategy. Social media is not just advertising. We have seen that. Because the messages can be sent to various people in the community. And all community members expect interactivity. So you have to be able to reply, and to reply to their reply. And you must also try not to over-control. For example, in one of the interviews with Amundi, which is one of the largest pan-European asset managers, the risk they have seen is they try to control. In fact, they have decided it's a very bad idea. Don't try to over-control social media. You will never manage to do that. So you have to take some risk. Then you have to target members using the most appropriate channels. We have seen that YouTube is very much used. It's a push system, so it's very practical. But if we want to go further than simple one-way communication, as we are today, information dissemination, investor advisor education, then you have to use two-way communication, which is community interactivity and community networking. And for this, then you will need to have a strategy on Twitter, for example, or on Facebook. So what are the main issues you have to tackle when you define a social media strategy? When you issue messages, you can issue messages directly with your corporate account or indirectly through your staff. Then you have to address the issue of brand and reputation. You have to address the issue of regulatory rules and of compliance, which is very tricky. And then you have to look at the issues of privacy laws and human resource procedures. Do you allow your staff to have private accounts or not? Can you disallow them? Or if you allow them, what are they entitled to do? Can you watch them? Can you follow them? What do you do when you are not happy with what they write? Then, if you receive message from your clients or from community member, then you also have to be careful at brand and reputation. But it's not enough. You also have to make sure your clients are satisfied. And if you want to satisfy your client, you have to give them content, but also you have to give them speed and reactivity. And it is not obvious, particularly in large firms, to be able to reply to a question or to a message from a client in 1 minute or in 2 minutes. And that's probably the turnaround time which is maximum if you want to reply to one client. And then you have issues which are inherent to general social media activity. You have an organization. Basically, you have to define who is owning the strategy, the general management, certainly, the public relation, communication, sales, human resource. You have to define who is in charge of this. Then you have language and culture. It's not that obvious. A lot of large firms are, in fact, very domestic in their language. It's only English and in their clientele base. However, you have firms which have a very international investor base. And that, for example, the issue when we interviewed Carmignac, which is one of the most international firms currently. What do they do when they receive messages in Italian, in German, in French, in English, in Chinese? And they have to reply in the mother tongue language of the community member. And that requires a very heavy and organization. Then you have to be careful at IT issues. IT security, obviously. We have seen some frauds. Accounts can be hacked. and it's a very important issue. And IT data storage, because if you have one day a legal problem, it's better you have the data with you. Otherwise, you may not be in a position to defend yourself. And then you have to be careful on the conflict between the social media, which are global by definition, and the regulation, which is more and more local. Over the last 5 years, we have seen that each regulator is trying to create rules in each country. And of course, the social media are completely global, and you have to be careful at this point. Then, once you have defined a strategy, you have to measure the results. In order to measure the results cleverly, you have to make sure who is owning the strategy, and then you have to define the proper KPIs. The sales figure is not the only proper KPI. Of course, if you have a lousy social media strategy, it's likely that you have lousy sales figures after, but the reverse is maybe not true. You have to monitor the user sentiment, and you have to monitor everything, what is objective and non-objective. You have to measure the positive, the negative, the neutral messages. Well, social media is not only a communication strategy. Nilofer just before presented what can happen, and social media can bring a disruption in the classical models of doing business. In asset management, we have seen already two. The first one is crowdfunding. You probably all know Kickstarter. Crowdfunding raised in 2012 $2.7 billion. It may not be a lot, but it's still quite important. And it's possible that crowdfunding will grow in the future. Another disruptive model which we have seen is mirrored investing or copycat investing. Basically what it is, it's where asset management meets social media. So we know the advantages of mirror investing. It's transparency, of course, that you will never get with another model. It's quickness. We know there have some drawbacks, tariffs and costs. It's still expensive. But classical asset management is also very expensive, so it's not sure that this drawback will last for long. And investor protection. But investor protection is also an issue for classical asset management. So this mirror investing model can grow maybe in the future. And what's likely is that other disruptive models will emerge in the coming months or in the coming years. Now it's time to conclude. So are social media a pure marketing tool or dawn of a new era? It's a question, probably more the second part of the question. There is still a long road ahead for social media and asset management. We see that US players and non-affiliated players lead the game. True user interactivity is still a long way off. Fund management groups need to deploy a strategy, and it's not an easy game. And it's quite likely that new models in social media will appear for asset management in the future. You have to think that in 2011, 1/3 of Generation Y people, have used social media for investment advice in 2011. In 10 years from now, it's possible, likely, that more than 50% of the worldwide investors use social media for advice and probably much more for trading and for investing. So that will change the world. Now I would like to thank you very much. And I would like to thank you, the teams who work on this survey, CACEIS and PwC. It was a very extensive survey. And if you have some questions, you can tweet us your question to discuss social media and asset management, you can download the report on pwc.com site or on CACEIS.com site. And I thank you very much.